What's up, guys? So recently, The Verge released an article on the Yincrow X6, which is an earphone that comes with an MX500 shell, and they look like this. So the MX500 shell was developed by Sennheiser originally, and it is a shell that was adopted, particularly in the last few years. They've become really, really popular in different parts of the world. I'm not sure actually how long they've been popular in different parts of the world, like Indonesia and things like that, places like that, excuse me. But these were originally developed by Sennheiser somewhere around the start of the aughts, 1999, 2000, 2001, therein. And as you can see, it's a really interesting design. They've got these ports around the back that allow for a really cool sense of stage, like a really interesting sound stage, particularly at the price point that they're offered right now on AliExpress and different outlets. So this is the Yincrow X6. And the Yincrow X6 was the one that they talked about particularly on The Verge, but there's a lot of different manufacturers that are using this shell and creating, I believe, earphones that have the best performance to price ratio really in the world. There's nothing that competes, in my opinion, with the MX500 shell if you're talking about earphones that come in below $10. IEMs don't even come close. They're not even on the radar. In terms of soundstage, in terms of resolution and imaging and things like that, all the things that you would want as an audiophile, the price to performance ratio for these guys is bar none. It's definitely the best. If you have the means, just spend 50, 60 bucks and pick up 5 or 6 different pairs and see what you think. But I'm telling you right now that you probably won't be disappointed. So the question is, where do you start with these? There is a Facebook group called Earbuds Anonymous, and specifically, these are called earbuds. And there's the distinction between these and earphones or IEMs is that these are buds. They're a bud-like shape, and that's what we're referring to when we say earbuds. But a few years ago, I used to write reviews for about these guys, let's say, and they had, I think it's kind of, the popularity has tapered off a little bit, but maybe with the help of the Verge article, it'll spring back into life, kind of thing. Not sure what's going to happen with that. That might just disappear entirely. But I thought after reading that article that I would take the opportunity to re-listen to these, and I was pleasantly surprised. So let's talk about the different ones I'm going to talk about. We have the Yincrow X6, which is actually, in my opinion, the same driver as the Vido. This is something that I mentioned a few years ago. The Vido is an earphone that was packaged with, I believe, a video game console at one point, and it became popular thanks to the help of a gentleman named Bloody Penguin, who is the guy that started the Earbuds Anonymous group on Facebook and was a reviewer for a while on HeadFi. I'm not sure if he's still an active reviewer, but he was for a while. The Vido are literally, you can get them for $3 to $4 USD, and they provide a truly fun sound. The Vido and the Yincrow, like I said, in my opinion, are the same driver. But the Yincrow does have a much better cable. It's longer and it doesn't have the Y in it. This thing is, I can't really show it to you here but there is a Y shape, so one side is longer than the other, and that can be a little bit annoying. You almost have to wear them behind your neck. But again, $3, $4 on AliExpress. That's spelled well, you can see it right there, Vido. They're bass cannons, particularly for the EMX500 shell. However, that bass comes with some audible distortion, in my opinion. Now, that is only distortion on certain songs and only if you're being really nitpicky as an audiophile. They're a hell of a lot of fun. They have good treble tuning without being too sibilant, and just this really great sense of stage and a really, really nice sort of resolution to them, particularly at that price point. Unbeatable. Kick the crap out of any IEMs that are $2 or $3, that's for sure. So the Vido is just basically a repackaged, well, the Yincrow X6 is a repackaged Vido, in my opinion. Maybe it looks a little bit nicer. They have the nice red shells. I believe these come in different colorways, and the cool. They do have a red cable and a couple different cable colors. Cable seems to be a little bit better quality. It's still nothing to write home about. It's got this different shaped connector. As you can see, comes out on an angle a little bit. And, you know, they're a lot of fun. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to go over some of the other ones that I think that might be better than these guys. The EMX500 potentially has a little bit better treble tuning, and almost this one is called the EMX500. Actually, that's E as in Edward, MX500, and this became very popular a couple years ago as well. It was packaged with an amp, I want to say, originally, and then they started selling it on its own when people started talking about how great it was. They are V-shaped. They do have bass. They're not as bassy as the Vido. They sit somewhere in between the Vido and the Monk Plus by Venture Electronics in terms of the bass. In terms of the treble presentation, they sit somewhere between the Monk and the Hi-Hi Z. They don't have as much treble as the Hi-Hi Z32, but they do have more treble than the Monk. What else? No hint of sibilance in these guys at all. But the thing is that because of the treble tuning, they might not be considered as sort of natural sounding as the Monk, but as the kids would say, I guess the Indonesian kids and the 70-year-old white men would say, there is sparkle here. So they have some sparkle. And they are really nice. They have a really interesting cable. This is one of the few that, these are probably around $10. They have a braided cable, as you can see, and potentially the nicest cable out of, well, I'm looking at the Monk SPC here, but that's $20. That's a variant of the Monk, which has a nicer cable than this. But this is the nicest cable, probably one of the nicest cables you can find under $10. Of course, another popular thing to do with these EMX500 shells is recable. That's become a thing. It's actually not super hard to do. Have I tried it? No, I haven't. But you can pop off the faceplate and get to the drivers right there, and then it's just a matter of using of basically heating up the little cable ends and just kind of melting off the solder and just resoldering gently, and these kind of slip into the shell pretty easily. So it's actually not that hard to recable, and if you could get a couple of cheap Vitos to practice on, it might be something fun to do. Anyways, yeah, fun times. So there is another one that was popular a couple of years ago, and I believe the popularity has waned a little bit, but at the time that the Monk was really popping off, a company called Hi-Hi Z came around, Hi-Hi Z, and this is the 32 variant. I'm assuming that stands for 32 ohms. These are sibilant prone, in my opinion. So as such, they're probably suitable for low listening volumes. But they do have a good sense of clarity. They have all the qualities of the MX500 shell, the sound stage, the imaging and things like that. Unfortunately, I don't find them to be as good a quality tuning because of the sibilance as the EMX500. If you're looking for that sparkle, I would recommend these over the Hi-Hi Z. They sit somewhere in between the EMX500 and again the Monk in terms of treble presentation. So they are they're ahead of that. So they are the most sibilant out of the bunch. So again, suitable for low listening volumes. The bass tuning sits somewhere between the Monk and the Vido. So they're not, the Monk would be potentially the most neutral sounding that I've heard, and the Vido would be the bassiest. So these are somewhere in between. They're not quite as bassy as the Vidos. And I can see people liking this tuning actually because it reminds me a little bit of the KZ-ZS6, which I thought was terrible. They're not as sibilant as the KZ-ZS6 to be clear, but in terms of the EMX500 samples that I have here, or examples I have here, they are the most sibilant. So there's that. Cable's good. Yeah. And they're cheap. I think these guys, you can get the Hi-Hi Z32. There's the 32S. They've come out with a whole bunch of different models. There's even some very expensive 400 to 650 ohm models that are up around, well, I think the 400 goes for somewhere between $60 and $80 USD, and the 650 is over 100. You get elevated quality once you hit those price points kind of thing, but we're not talking about those today, so we'll skip out on that. But a lot of variants of Hi-Hi Z, a popular company a couple of years ago anyways, and a couple of spin-off companies as well. Anyways, these are really interesting. These are the Qian 69, and Qian, that's spelled Qian, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And if I'm not, I apologize to the company because I think they make great product. But I just don't know how to pronounce it. What am I going to tell you? Elevated bass without the distortion presented by the Yincrow and Vido. Still, the Vito and Yincrow are even bassier than these. These are probably maybe the nicest looking. Probably go for around $10 USD, maybe between 8 and 12, somewhere in there. Noticeably more refined sounding. Like these things have a very smooth presentation, smoother treble presentation. To me, better imaging than the X6, than the Yincrow X6, and on the same sort of stage as the Monk. Really, really nice sounding. These sit somewhere between, in terms of their presentation, they're a little bit more V-shaped. They're than the Monk, for example, yet still quite natural sounding. I really like these. These are probably on some days can be my favorite, the Qian 69. Now they have other models. They've done a couple of different shells. This is the Qian 25 that you can find for even cheaper. The Qian 25 is doesn't have any writing on it actually. And it's your classic EMX500 shell. You can get them in different color variants. They sound very, very similar to the 69, but I would recommend getting the 69 because it almost seems like it's a little bit more refined. This shell variant is interesting. It's different, and I don't know the origin of this shell, but it sounds very, very, very good. Really, really like these a lot. And they're really beautiful, and the cable's really nice. So smoother treble, but the same amount of treble. So there's a similar attack to the EMX500, but somehow a little bit smoother, a little less grainy. These are great. These are highly recommended. So, is it time? All right. This is the Monk Plus, and by and large, this is the most popular of the EMX500. They've got exclusive versions on Mass Drop. I'm sure they've sold a bundle of these. These are, I can't even begin to guess how many of these have been sold. This is the SPC cable variant, and they come in with espresso cables. Here's the espresso cable. The SPC cable. You can get these guys for, I don't know, around $20 USD. But typically these are sitting around $5 or $6. These are the smoothest sounding and definitely the most neutral of the ones that I've described today. They're completely distortion free, 64 ohm drivers, so you do get a slight benefit by potentially amping these or using them with a DAP. They can become more resolving as such, but again, you could say the same about anything else. Do you need a DAP? No, you don't. Can you run these from an iPhone? Absolutely, and they're going to sound great. To me, the thing that the Monk has and continues to do amazing is vocals. Vocals sound so natural. Male and female vocals come through beautifully and organically. Natural, natural, natural. That's how I would describe the Monk in a nutshell. Just the most natural sounding of the bunch here, and really, really, really nice. What else can I say? They have all the presentation qualities of the EMX500 shell. It is an EMX500 shell. I also want to mention that the cool thing about all these guys, and maybe one of the things that is discounted quite a bit, is that you can tune these on your own. You can change the treble presentation and even the amount of bass based on what sort of foams you use with them. If you run them naked, you can potentially add some treble and take down the bass a little bit. If you use donut foams, you can add bass, you can elevate bass without losing treble. If you use a regular foam, then maybe potentially you just kind of flatten the sound a little bit. And then you have thin foams. Where's the thin foams? Here's thin foams. These come in a pack that Venture Electronics makes. You can find them on ventureelectronicsclan.com. And these are thin foams, and they have foam packs that you can buy. And these also just change the sound slightly as well. Maybe potentially they increase the treble a little bit without, but allowing you to improve your fit, maybe, because the thing about these guys is that, again, there is not going to be, they can fall out of your ears, and you got to work on the fit. So if you're running them naked, you might find that they don't stay in your ears properly. So there's that. So I find that I need the foams in order to keep them in my ears, but that's me. So I don't know. So that's an introduction and a short review of some different EMX500 shell models that you can get. The Monk, the Yincrow, the Vido, same driver, super cheap, crappier cable. The Qian 69, the Tai High Z. Oh, and I should mention one other thing. The Monk Lite. So these are around $5 as well. They fit better. They're lighter, they're smaller, and they tend to stick in your ear better. The unfortunate thing about them is that they don't quite sound as good as the Monk Plus. They're similar in most frequencies. However, a noticeable turned up treble that can be just sibilant on certain songs. But again, the best comfort and fit. So you might want to try those out as well. And again, just my ears, guys, so don't shoot the messenger. Some of you might hear these differently. What a mess that looks like. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you like the channel, subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up if you can, if you liked it. And see you again soon. Cheers.